Hello and welcome to New Book on the Block. I'm Eric Fanafana, and today I'm talking to Caroline Ambrose, who, amongst other things, is the founder of the Bath Novel Awards. Caroline, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Hello.
So to start with, explain to people who might not know what the Bath Novel Award is.
Sure. So the Bath Novel Awards were founded in 2013 by me, and they are two international prizes for writers who are emerging, and it's writers of novels. And we have two prizes. One is for adult novels and one is for children's novels. The children's novel prize is judged by, shortlisted by kids, and the idea is that they are prizes that help writers get past the slush pile, and really talented writers find their way forward and get a spotlight in publishing. It's incredibly hard to get a manuscript published, and so it's a way of highlighting talent. Yeah.
That sounds excellent. What inspired you to set up the awards?
Goodness, I don't know how long ago this was now, but way back in the day, I'm a very book person.
Yeah.
When I first moved to Bath, I started running writing workshops, and people would come along and critique their novels every week.
Critique their own novels?
Critique each other's novels,
Okay.
So you'd bring along a chapter, everybody would talk about it, and I hosted those, I don't know, for about 10 years. And over the years I noticed that the chats, that people were often having about prizes and how hard it was to get published, people were saying that they're just having bad experiences, and I started looking at prizes and saw there just a very, very few for novels, and certainly were at the time. There's like 1,000 short story prizes.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd have a go. And I didn't quite expect it to become as large as it is. Quite a success. No. But yeah, it's just gone from strength to strength. We're on our 10th award. Typically goes up by about 10% every year. Yeah. We get about 2,000 manuscripts worldwide.
Was it always international then?
Always, yeah, always. And we've had international winners. One of our most wonderful winners in the second year is an Indonesian writer who lives in Singapore, who wrote a beautiful book called Rainbirds, Clarissa Gunawan.
Oh yes, yeah, I looked at that.
Right, yeah. It's an extraordinary book. It's quite a quiet book, but it's building and building and building. And I think it's sold now, I've lost track in all honesty of how many territories it's sold in, yeah. So books like that might fly under the radar.
So what was the result of the most recent Bath Novel Award?
So we announced the Children's Novel Award on Thursday.
Oh. And
at the Bath's Museum of Architecture, have you ever been there? So we had a full champagne-y night with all the writers there.
Fancy.
Very fancy. And what's really lovely about that one is all the junior judges come, and they're aged from 6 to 17. So anyway, we had a short list of 6, and a winner was chosen there, and the winner this year is a book called Loops. It's a book for teens. It's a psychological thriller. It's unputdownable, and extraordinarily the winner, because we judge blind, we don't know who the writers are. Yeah. The winner is, she used to be an actress in Hollyoaks, so it was all a bit of an unusual award. And she's amazing. She's called Cassie Powney. She's also the beauty editor at Cosmopolitan magazine, and had just had a baby, so she's
quite high profile with all that.
Quite high profile, and she had her eight-week-old baby in one hand and the award in another, and now is being pursued by agents across the land. So yes, her maternity leave's taken an unexpected turn, I think.
Goodness. And what put Loops above all the other books? What made it that bit better, that made it win the award?
So we get down to a long list quite easily, and I think the long list was about 33 this time. And then we send out the full manuscript to kids and teens, and we ask them to fill out a report talking about what they liked, what could be better, and to give it a mark. And there are mostly children from schools across Bath, particularly Ralph Allen have helped us this time, and Bathwick St Mary. And this was particularly picked up by the Ralph Allen kids, this book. But basically they'll come back, those reports come back, and they alone choose the shortlist, which this time was 6. And I love it because when we have our adult prize, adults read and they'll be thinking, what's the next trend? What's this like? What does publishing want?
But in children's novels, they don't get
stuff. entertain me. Is it good? I don't care if paranormal's over. I don't care about this trend. This book is really great. It moved me. And particularly if a child comes back and says again to me, I'm still thinking about that book. It made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me think of this, it made me think of that. And when we get down to the shortlist, then for my sanity, we don't let the children choose the winner. So we have the leading literary agents. So this time we had Hilary Delamere, who represents everyone from Paddington Bear to Mallory Blackman. She's an incredible literary agent. And literary agents are so generous to us. They judge so carefully and read them through and choose the book and almost always then sign the winner. But that's up to the winner to choose. Yeah.
So it's like a children's award.
Yeah.
Chosen by children.
Yeah, there are too many grown-ups.
That's great.
As in publishing.
Yeah.
Children's publishing is decided mostly, I've come to the conclusion, by 28-year-olds who, had a very privileged Oxbridge education largely. And actually, I learn so much from the kids. Every year they will completely surprise me with a book that I never would have thought they would like. And it teaches me so much about what they love. This year they went... particularly the younger kids went for a very dark book set in World War II.
Wow.
And it's about a girl whose family is shot and then she has to go on the run and becomes like a badass feminist poet warrior. And I was nervous about sending it to some of the 10-year-olds, but they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And some of their comments were so moving about, this is the kind of book we want to know about. We know that the world is strange. We pick up on people being scared about Europe, and actually we want to read this stuff, and it felt really important, and I couldn't have been more wrong about that book, and that's what I love. It's totally about them. It's never my choice.
So in a way, this is completely off topic, but fiction is very important for young readers, isn't it? Because it helps them sort of come to terms with things that aren't completely okay with the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just prepares them for the world in that way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the junior judges, they didn't get much of it this time, but the teen junior judges offer, they really love fantasy and horror novels, and there's a real argument about, there are so few things that young people, and especially younger kids, get to choose for free in life. It's why I'm so passionate about libraries. You can go, you can pick the book, there's not a high risk, you can try it out, and you can see worlds and think, and you can learn so much, can't you, through fiction. There's a real argument about the dark side of YA literature in particular. Allows you to experience things that you're perhaps shielded from in real life. Literature's so important for kids.
So, and is there any advice you might give to very young authors, so maybe my age, who would like to enter into this award but aren't really sure what sort of books you might be looking for?
We take all books, all genres. For the adult prize, the manuscript has to be over 50,000 words. But other than that, we'll take anything. And in the children's prize, it's completely open.
Yeah.
I would say make it entertaining from the get-go. One of my favourite ever comments that Poppy, age 9, in Bodmin, junior judge, gave once on a manuscript was, be more interesting more quickly. And I think you can apply that to everything in life. And, that would be my advice to any writer. Be more interesting more quickly, but go for it. Go for it. I mean, the top 1%, make it through in the end, but you've got to put your work out there to start getting a sense of where you stack up. Yeah.
And has there been any novels entered into the Bath Novel Awards that maybe didn't win, but you want to give a particular shout-out to?
Oh, where would I start with that? Do you know, there's one that is really topical at the moment because most of the books end up getting picked up, and some have had huge deals, including a book called Friend Request, which was a huge seller, I don't know, maybe like 500,000 seller.
Yeah.
And another book called Baby Doll, which got picked up by Richard and Judy's book club, if you know that, and Smith's, and that was huge internationally. But there are the little ones that get away, and there's one that was very sweet this time. So in the very first year of the Children's Prize, there was one manuscript that the kids laughed at and still talk about. And it's about... I think he's about a 10-year-old boy who accidentally shrinks his mum to the size of a hamster and keeps her in a cage. And the writing is hilarious. And I very, very rarely laugh out loud at the manuscripts as I'm going through them. But that one made me laugh so much I woke my husband up in bed laughing. It's very Sue Townsend, if you remember.
Yeah.
Adrian Mole. It's very, very authentic, fluent human dialogue, and I love it, and the kids loved it. Anyway, that book never got anywhere, mainly because the writer didn't feel confident about what she was doing. But it had been our runner-up in the first year. Anyway, that writer came back with a different manuscript, which made our long list. And last week she won the long list prize of an 18-week course to go back and get that first manuscript up to scratch. So, yeah, I've got goosebumps thinking about it. I've always felt that book is a breakout, standout, funny book for kids, and I'd love that book to be everywhere. Yeah, it's very funny.
That sounds great.
Yeah, watch it. She's called Sharon Tandy, and she's assistant to the mayor in Kidderminster, and she is funny as.
And, of course, so many books to read, so many characters as well. Can you... This might seem a bit of a niche question, but can you tell much about the characters just from the way the book's written?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, some of them... So I read about 2,000 manuscripts a year, so even though I'm not voting, I read everything because I'm thinking, who's the best person to read this out of our big team of writers? And some of these characters, they feel so real to me, you know? Most of them vanish, but some of them sort of live on or off stage afterwards, and I'll be watching something on the news and I'll be thinking, well, I wonder how the character in that book, do you know what I mean? There's a character called Stingray that was in a voting book a couple of years ago, and I'll quite often think, oh, I wonder what he thinks about Brexit, you know? And then you think, oh, no, they're not real, you know, they become... I think that's like with all books, isn't it? You know, these characters become
real to the reader.
They do, for sure. And I particularly like dialogue-driven books myself. But yeah.
Do you have any particular pet peeves then?
Yes, I do.
In your books?
Oh,
I know that for me, it's the quotation marks. Like I prefer double quotation marks.
Oh,
but if there are no quotation marks at all in the entire book, then I'm just going.
You're not a fan of Cormac McCarthy? No, I'm all right with quotation marks. One that people always laugh at me about is that I get really irritated by anybody who puts the word cacophony on the first page. It's like you wouldn't believe how often that happens. And this is very unfair because I'd say half of writers do this, but I get really irritated as well by people who indent the first line in each chapter, you know, as if it's a normal paragraph. And if you look at any book, it's always full left-hand margin. It's very petty and very picky, but that always bothers me. I would say a good quarter of books start with somebody waking up and thinking about what they're going to do that day. And, you know, one of them was actually one because they did it in a very unusual way. That character woke up in a hearse with his sister's ashes and a vase on his lap, and I was like, wow, they're twisting this, but you know,
but usually when they wake up, they're like,
no, maybe ditch that. Start in chapter 2.
That's another handy bit of advice for authors wanting to enter your award.
Yes.
Don't start with waking up.
No, I mean, I think one of our successes has been that, you know, agents they're just deluged with stuff. Deluged with manuscripts, and they have a very limited amount of time and have to often make up their minds, you know, very early on about books. One thing about us is that we will keep going. We will, you know, read until we're absolutely sure. And sometimes books that have been multi-rejected come to us, and you just get that feeling, no, hang on.
There might be something good at the end of the book.
And it's like, okay, this starts in chapter 5, and this is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, so that's... You know, I'm always so frightened we'll miss somebody amazing that we'll keep reading. Yes.
It's a very wise decision. So, for young adult books, in my opinion, they're always of two broad ideas, which is dystopian action-adventure type thing, or sort of social issue and mental health. Why do you think this is, and what sort of effect do you think this is going to have on young readers?
Wow, that's quite a broad brush on it. I think the dystopian thing has been very much the UK market in YA has been dominated by American films, and obviously, you know, all the famous trilogies, and then obviously there's been a huge surge with books like Angie Thomas's The Hate You Give, which has also dominated our...
Absolutely extraordinary book.
Yeah, I cannot wait to read the next one. It's out. It's out, Yeah, so the YA bestseller lists are very much dominated by those big franchise stories, and they get a big marketing spend behind them, and also the Simon series, which I can't remember the name of now. But yes, this rise of contemporary is really interesting. But also we see a lot of fantasy. We see a great deal of fantasy books coming through, and I mean, I personally love YA contemporary. What we're seeing more within YA is actually writers moving either up or down. There's a bit of a downer on YA in publishing at the moment, which is crazy because, people still want to read it. Yeah. But I've seen a lot of YA writers thinking, actually, I'll make this a middle grade book. Yeah. We'll just notch it up.
Make it a proper adult book.
Yeah.
So you think there should be more books channelled specifically to mid to late teens?
I do think that YA just covers a whole ridiculous spread because you're completely different. People start reading YA. If there's a character who's 13, it's very often being read by 11 and 12-year-olds, and you're completely different from who you are when you're 12 to when you are 18, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, so there's this very wide category, and we break ours down in entries by older YA and younger YA, but still quite often mix it up. But I do think, I think publishing needs to zone in and, bring out different ranges within YA more, yeah.
Yeah. So, complete change of topic now. Obviously, you're a passionate... I'll say that again. Obviously, you're a passionate political campaigner, particularly on the cases for libraries. And I noticed you did a Freedom for Information request from the council about Brexit.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did.
What sort of outcome do you hope for in this upcoming local election this year, on the 2nd of May?
I think it's a really interesting one because, for 20 years, Bath has either been
Tory or Lib Dem.
Conservative, and, it's the same amount of time I've been in Bath, and I'm really puzzled by there are so many talented, creative brains in Bath, and we've got this very elderly, white, privileged male council by and large. If you ever go to a council meeting, it's horrifying. And we just don't seem to have the ambition and the excitement that we should have about our city. And we flip-flop between the two, and I feel like local people are really shut out. My experience through libraries has just been... I've been shocked to the core about how little people are listened to. I've seen politicians ignore children who've gone to the council to make statements. I've seen complete lies told about libraries. And so in the local elections, the thing that I'm really excited about is actually the independent group.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't sure about to start with, but I went to a meeting about 1.5 years ago and saw a little bit about what was being talked about. And actually, I think it's the right thing. I really do. I think that from my experience, I have sat through dozens and dozens of council meetings where the whole time is wasted bickering and arguing along very tribal lines that has nothing of value for Bath. And it's really horrifying. We once petitioned. We had we collected a huge petition.
Yeah. And
the result of this petition, you have to work out all these crazy
What was the
ways.
subject of the petition?
So it was to do with libraries.
Yeah.
So it was about, not closing down the podium or cutting it in half or whatever they were up to at that point. And we took it in, and so the upshot of this petition was that if you get above a certain amount of numbers of the politicians sign a petition, then the council leader has to agree to an hour's public debate in the council chamber. So brilliant, we did that, served it. One of our junior judges served it to the council, and it took 6 months of asking and reminding for the council to agree to have this hour debate. We finally got it. And out of that hour, I'd say about 3/4 of it was spent by Labour and Lib Dems and Tories arguing with each other about who should have the chance to speak first. Well, all the protesters and the children sat on the side going...
Does it matter who speaks first?
And it's like this bonkers circus in there, where people are just not listening.
That's where you need a debate officiator who... This is an unbiased person who chooses then who talks.
Yeah, or just have independents who don't have to sit and fight all the time.
Yeah.
They just talk about what's the most incredible thing we could do for Bath, what do local people want, let's focus on that. And I think we're really held back by particularly poor calibre of local government in Bath. I find it horrifying.
Goodness me. Wow. And so the library in Bath as well has come under a lot of public scrutiny over the years. And what do you think is so important about keeping libraries in Bath open for people to use? Yeah,
well, I think one of the things that's been particularly disappointing is that the Conservatives have created this myth that, oh, well, you know, we may as well close them all down, or we won't close them down, we're being very kind by doing that. You know, bollocks to that. Libraries are a legal right. They are protected in law, and it is the council's job to provide them, and they are protected in law under the Public Museums Act for a very important reason, because they change lives, they add value, and they are central to the community. So 9 out of 10 people want a public library. Yeah. They cost very little. 9 out of 10 people really value it in Bath. It's used at that tiny library when we've got a really underfunded, very mediocre library. You know, if you look at the amazing libraries you can find in other cities, we've got a very poor, substandard, poorly stocked library that has £1 a year in rent to pay. It's absolutely ridiculous. We spend the price of a paperback per person per decade on books through libraries. It's absolutely ridiculous. And yet, and the hours have been cut, so you can't get in there, you know, if you've got a job or you're a student, whatever. And yet, 500,000 people every year continue to go into that library and value it and need it and try and study there. Yeah. And it's really important to people.
And libraries are also a valuable thing in society, aren't they? Yeah. Like, you don't shut a hospital if it's no longer economically viable, do you? You keep it open because it's providing a vital service.
No, I mean, this would bring me on to community libraries, because, I mean, there's the other farce. You know, we've ended up with a council that's pretending that it's opening libraries when actually it's closed all but 3 public libraries for a population of 180,000 people in a country where the average is 1 per 20,000 residents, and we are some way, if not the bottom of library standards in England as far as I can see. And we replace them with these joke libraries, you know, which are better than nothing, but, you know, your auntie's best mate volunteering to stand beside a room stocked with books the charity shop didn't want. It's not a professionally run library. You know, librarians study for 4 years for a reason. You know, it's really important.
And I read Caitlin Moran's book, Moranthology, and one of the essays in it is all about how awful it is that people close libraries, because for Caitlin Moran, who was born quite poor, you know, she lived on benefits for most of her childhood, and she always saw libraries as a way to escape from her circumstances. And if it wasn't for libraries, she doesn't think any of her siblings or herself would have been able to get that far in the world, because libraries help them learn and develop their own senses of identity.
Yeah, I mean, they're totally inclusive enablers for so many people. I grew up in poverty. I was the free school dinners kid, and, you know, libraries mattered enormously. And now I work with this army of kids. Very often they're kids that we've found because incredible school librarians, because that's pretty much all we've got left, you know, tell us about these kids. And these libraries matter so much to them, and there's a really interesting national statistic that shows that 18 to 25s are the demographic that use libraries the most now in the UK. You know, as a place to work, there's a lot of talk about the third place as well, you know, somewhere safe and quiet, outside school or work or home, where you can go and study. Yeah. And Bath's young people are missing out on so many of the advantages that should be a no-brainer in a city like ours. You know, Bath's already the most unequal place in England, I saw in the Chronicle.
Really?
For educational outcomes for children.
Me.
So there's areas of Bath where, you know, maybe 10% of kids will get to university, and there's other areas of Bath where 100% of kids will get to university. And, we should really be paying attention to these messages.
Yeah.
Bath has every opportunity to make this incredible for everyone. And I feel we've been really poorly served. And I haven't felt that the politicians have done their jobs.
I mean, I particularly remember when I was young, and, I would go there with my mum and all my brothers and sisters, and we would take about between 5 and 10 books out each every week.
Right.
And we just blazed through them. The library was a wonderful place for us to go. We always look forward to it.
I think you'd be very disappointed if you went in now. I mean, I'm very lucky because I get sent more books than I could ever read.
Yeah.
But if you go in the library at any point now, you really struggle to find
anything worthwhile.
Right. It's not the stuff that people want to read. Somebody was telling me the other day that they tried to order a book and been told that there were 40 people ahead of them in the queue.
For that one book.
For that one book. And it's the council's job to use our council tax to give us the resources that we pay them to do. And, it's really poor to the point where, I haven't talked about this very much publicly, but I have twice had to involve lawyers to remind the council that they cannot close the library, and it's against the law. And both times that has worked. Most recently, I did it on Halloween, happily enough, because the council were going to close Bath Central Library again from this January. It would have been closed by now, and it's just not okay to leave a city without a library. It really worries me, and I've asked every politician I've talked to, come and have a meeting in the library. Let's go and look in there and look at all the kids in here, all the older people from all walks of life in here, and how important it is. And Tim Warren in particular, who's the council leader, said he doesn't go in libraries.
He's being blasé about it all.
The library workers are forbidden to talk about it. It's ridiculous. We should have incredible libraries.
A good library is really important as well, because you can get... This is a story that my mum and my sister, they wanted to do some research on a topic, and they decided who's going to find out the most stuff in half an hour. One person has the internet, one person has books.
That's a great project, yeah.
My sister used the internet. She got this much information in half an hour. My mother got the books, and she got this much information in half an hour. And, do you really need to say anything else? Books are much more useful.
Well, you need a mix, right?
You do need a mix, but, books, you can get things in more detail, and everything needs to be verified as well, because otherwise it's illegal to publish it.
Yeah, well, this is such an important thing now, in terms of, librarians are one of the few people we really still trust to tell us the truth. We don't trust politicians, for sure. We don't trust the BBC. We don't trust quite a lot of the most popular press, but librarians, time after time, surveys show those are people we trust, and it's really disturbing that those are the people that our government is trying to get rid of. Well, has got rid of most of them.
Yeah.
If I was in charge of Bath, I would bring the most incredible library services back. It's ridiculous. We are so poorly served. Other projects that I'm involved in are to do with making Bath a UNESCO City of Literature, which is we absolutely should be, right?
Yeah, of course. We've got Jane Austen.
Right. But guess what the thing that holds us back from being up there, and there's 7 of those in the UK and the places like Nottingham and Edinburgh, guess what holds us back? Our library service is not world
Good
class.
Enough.
So there's opportunities there, but sadly I think anything that the politicians touch that seems to be really exciting, community-driven, creative projects dies a death. So I've come to see that actually, even though we need to elect the best people we can from what's there, the really important things, you've got to do away from them. I think.
I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up now because we're running short on time. One more thing that on your Twitter page, you mentioned that you're a super fan of super trees.
Yes. Are you puzzled?
I am very puzzled.
So, super trees refers to, there's a really iconic park in Singapore called Gardens by the Bay. It was featured on Attenborough's Planet Earth. It's a huge, it looks like Avatar.
Oh.
It's a huge, and you need to Google it. So, Gardens by the Bay, you need to Google it. Anyway, my husband designed it. So, it's just code for that, because when I'm not thinking about libraries and books, I'm quite often thinking, looking to see who's in this incredible park in Singapore and the super trees.
That sounds wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your time, Caroline Ambrose, and thank you for watching. This has been New Book on the Block. I'm Eric Finalfinal. Goodbye.